Right now, somewhere in your home, there is a roll of toilet paper, maybe two, maybe a whole closet full, and you have probably never once thought about how extraordinary that is. Because for the vast majority of human history, across hundreds of thousands of years of ancient hygiene rituals, survival struggles, and daily life in the past, there was no Charmin, no quilted three-ply softness, nothing even close. So here's the question that nobody really talks about. How did ancient people clean themselves? And the answer is weirder, more creative, and honestly more fascinating than you could ever imagine. Welcome to the hidden history of toilets, the forgotten chapter of ancient human life that textbooks are too polite to cover. I am glad you are here because today we are going in. Let us start at the very beginning. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, early humans lived as hunter-gatherers, constantly moving, surviving on instinct, and using whatever the natural world offered them. And when it came to personal hygiene, nature was the pharmacy, the toolkit, and yes, the bathroom supply closet. Leaves were the most obvious solution. Broad, smooth, non-toxic leaves, think something like a large fig leaf or tropical foliage, were used across cultures on nearly every continent. But here is where it gets interesting. Ancient humans were not just grabbing any leaf. Anthropologists believe early communities developed real knowledge about which plants were safe and which would cause serious problems. That is, human survival skills at their most intimate. Moss was another popular option, particularly in colder climates. It is soft, naturally antibacterial, and absorbent. Ancient people in Northern Europe and parts of Asia were essentially using something remarkably close in function to what we consider modern hygiene products today, just sourced directly from the forest floor. And here's something to think about. If you were dropped into a forest right now, with no supplies whatsoever, could you identify a safe leaf to use? Most of us could not. Ancient humans could, without hesitation. Now, as human societies grew, as cities rose, as trade routes opened, as the history of toilets began to take shape, ancient hygiene became more structured, more cultural, and honestly, far more surprising. In ancient Rome, one of the most sophisticated civilizations in history, public bathrooms were a social experience. Romans sat side by side in long stone communal latrines, chatting, conducting business, discussing philosophy, while sharing a single tool called a xylospongium. That is a sponge attached to a stick, kept in a communal bucket of salt water or vinegar. One sponge, shared by everyone. Now pause for a moment. Knowing that, does modern life suddenly feel a little more luxurious? I think it does. Meanwhile, ancient Greeks used small ceramic pieces or smooth pottery fragments, a practice so common that archaeologists have actually found ancient equivalents of these in dig sites across the Mediterranean. These fragments even had a name, pessoi. Some were inscribed with the names of political enemies, which tells you everything you need to know about how Greeks felt about their rivals. In ancient China and Japan, wooden or bamboo sticks called chugi were standard practice, flat, smoothed by use, and remarkably practical given the resources available. These are some of the earliest recorded examples of purpose-built hygiene tools in all of human history, and they predate modern toilet paper by well over 1,000 years. But not every ancient human lived in Rome or Athens or the great cities of the East. Most people throughout history lived in rural communities, close to rivers, coastlines, deserts, and plains. In coastal communities across the ancient world, from the Pacific Islands to the shores of West Africa, water itself was the primary tool. Running water, ocean water, river water. And honestly, from a purely hygienic standpoint, researchers and historians note this was often one of the most effective methods of all. In the ancient Middle East and across the Islamic world from the 7th century onward, the left hand and water became a deliberate, codified hygiene practice. So deeply embedded was this custom that it influenced which hand was used for eating, for greeting, and for sacred acts. A social structure built around hygiene. That is ancient innovation shaping culture at the deepest level. Indigenous communities across the Americas used corncobs, particularly after the widespread cultivation of maize, which were abundant, structured, and surprisingly functional. Historians have documented this practice in detail across multiple North American cultures. Some communities also used tufts of dried grass, animal fur, or smooth river stones warmed by sunlight. And here's a question worth sitting with. What does it say about human creativity and resilience that people across every continent, across every era, found a solution? Each one different, each one adapted to its environment, and each one completely logical within its own world. It was not until 1857 that the first commercially produced toilet paper appeared, created by Joseph Gaiety in the United States. He sold it as a medicinal product, marketed to protect against hemorrhoids, and it was considered a luxury item. Mass-produced, perforated, rolled toilet paper as we know it today did not become standard until the 1880s. And widespread global adoption. That happened mostly in the 20th century. Think about that. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. We use toilet paper, the version we consider completely basic and essential, for less than 200 of them. For 99.9% of human history, people found another way. And they survived. They thrived. They built empires, wrote poetry, raised families, and looked up at the same stars you see tonight. There is something genuinely humbling about this corner of forgotten history. We spend so much time celebrating ancient innovations, the pyramids, the aqueducts, the great libraries, and almost no time thinking about the quiet, daily ingenuity that kept ordinary people alive and functional every single day. Ancient hygiene was not primitive. It was adaptive. It was intelligent. It was human. And here is the final thought I want to leave you with. The next time you reach for that roll without thinking, remember that you are the heir to 300,000 years of problem solving, of creativity under pressure, of a species that looked at a world with no solutions and invented one every single time. That is not weird history. That is not bizarre human habits. That is the most human story there is. If this kind of deep dive into daily life in the past is something that moves you, if you want more of these surprising history facts that change the way you see the world, then subscribe, hit the notification bell, and come back next time because we are just getting started.